I'm Natalie Sanaj, and I'm here with Diane Foley and Thomas Durkin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Nice
so
to
my
meet you.
first question is, can you just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing this week and why you're here?
Well, I'm particularly honored to be here. It was the Center for Peacemaking that reached out to me to come and speak, and it's truly an honor because Jim did his undergraduate work here. So I was here for their peacemaking series. What is it?
Distinguished Peacemakers.
Yeah, I don't feel like a distinguished peacemaker, to be honest, but I'm very honored that they brought me here because it's given me a chance to see what the Center for Peacemaking is doing, which is extraordinary, really. I'm very impressed.
Perfect. So can you tell us a little bit about what this Distinguished Peacemaker
Sure.
series is?
Each year the center brings in a distinguished peacemaker, and despite Diane thinking she's not one, she is. And last year we had Mel Duncan, who had been nominated for a Nobel Prize, and this year we have Diane. And the idea is we bring people that are doing things either nationally and or internationally that promote aspects of nonviolence that relate to the mission at the Center for Peacemaking. And so we reached out to Diane because of the work she's done with the James W. Foley Foundation and the great things they're doing for journalists and for safety. And also because of just how Diane has responded after her son was killed, after Jim was killed, in a way that we feel promotes a nonviolent response, something that deals with justice and not just anger or hatred, but doing something positive in the world. So we felt Diane was the perfect peacemaker to come speak to students, faculty, and the community this year.
Perfect. How do you feel about being that Distinguished Peacemaker?
Well, like I said, Natalie, it's certainly an honor. I think my hope really has just been to continue Jim's legacy, because Jim's the one who challenges me. He's the one who really found his voice and passion for social justice here at Marquette University. So I'm just merely trying to carry on some of what I think Jim would want to come out of his tragic murder, really. I know Jim would have wanted something good. You know, he was an optimist. He was someone who always was looking for the hopeful, the good side of even a bad story. So I'm merely doing what I feel he would have wanted. And I'm just so grateful because a lot of Jim's friendships and such as his dear friend Tom Durkin and so many others too have just helped me to do that, have encouraged that goodness that was part of who Jim was, in spite of himself. I mean, he, so it's a true honor to be here, Natalie.
Perfect. Thank you. So how did you meet Jim?
Oh, I met Jim back in 1992 during our first week as freshmen. We crossed paths and started up a conversation, and we became fast friends. And it's been, I don't want to count the years, but it's since I met him the first week as a freshman on this campus.
Perfect. So when Jim was overseas, how often did you hear from him, from either of you?
Well, quite often. Jim knew it was anxiety producing for the family when he went abroad. So he was incredibly thoughtful about that. And we'd always hear from him a minimum of once a week. And he would send little text messages but he really tried to call once a week, and always on special occasions, like if it was a holiday or a birthday. Or I remember the last time I spoke to him, I had an elderly aunt. She was 103 years old, and she had just passed away. And so I remember him calling me from Syria to express his condolences to me. That was the last time I spoke to him. So Jim was very good about keeping in touch. He thought that was important.
Mm-hmm. Were you in touch with him?
Yeah, we'd email back and forth. Ours were more, it wasn't so much checking up on each other, but busting each other's chops or something funny, or I'd read something he'd write, and I'd give a wisecrack about it, and then he would do something, say something back to me. But yeah, we were regularly in contact, so that it was off that if you didn't hear from him, it'd be worrisome. So, but at least once a week, we were going back and forth on email about something.
Wonderful. So in the movie, the James Foley story, you said something along the lines of you never knew if Jim really had found his place with careers and everywhere he was going. So do you think he ever found that place that made Jim Jim?
Definitely. I mean, I really think that's an excellent question, Natalie, because I think it's hard to find one's place in the world sometimes, and I think some people are more fussy about finding that just sweet spot. But Jim, I know, finally found it in journalism, because Jim had always really cared about people's stories. He was just plain curious. He wanted to know what people thought and how they felt. And I think particularly when he met people who really were suffering from poverty or war or other kinds of inequities, he was particularly passionate about telling those stories. So journalism gave him a way to bring those things together in a way that he felt was incredibly important. So that's why he was so passionate about it, Natalie. Yeah, I really felt he had found his passion for sure.
Perfect. So you also said that when he would come home, he would interview you and your husband. During those interviews, did you ever express your concerns? Did you ever say you were scared, if you were scared, anything like that?
Oh, well, definitely. However, Jim was interesting because he really always would turn things around to you. But how are you doing? You know, what's going on? How do you feel about, he'd ask about one of his siblings or something else. And he truly was interested. It wasn't that he was, just trying to distract himself, but it was such that he really didn't talk a lot about what he was doing. And I suspect some of that was intentional. But of course, especially after his first captivity in Libya, we did have those talks. But he convinced us that this was something he felt he had to do. So it was kind of that hard spot as a parent to want to encourage what your son has chosen to do, but being selfishly concerned for his safety, And that's partly why as a foundation, I've been very concerned about young people having the opportunity to do important work in the world, but to also be as safe as possible.
How did either of you feel when he told you he was going back?
Go ahead, Tom.
Back after his captivity in Libya?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I wasn't a fan of it. I mean, I said to him, like, Syria is more dangerous than Libya, and you got captured in Libya. Like, why would you? But he believed in it. I mean, it's kind of how Diane's describing it. Like, if someone believes in something and someone's doing what they're passionate about, like, kind of going back to what Diane was saying, like, when you asked if Jim had found his place, I mean, Jim's place was with people. I mean, that's where he was comfortable, with people. I mean, as a teacher, as a writer, and then as a journalist, and he believed in what he was doing. So it's hard. How do you tell somebody, like, don't do something because it's dangerous? I was worried for him, but I also supported it because I truly believe that's what he was meant to do. He was meant to tell people stories.
It was difficult, though, and I think family members, some of his siblings, argued with him. I mean, there were people who, didn't agree and, disagreed, but it's hard to counter when someone feels they're called to do something. Do you know what I'm saying?
So when you do go around to all these places, to universities, to new cities, overseas, what is it like telling Jim's story over again, and what are you feeling? Even when you talk here at Marquette about him, what are you going through?
I have I want to share Jim's legacy. I want Jim's legacy to live on. But it's still something I've never, like, it's never been like resolved in my mind, like what happened to him and how it happened. And I have a hard, I'm comfortable talking about Jim. I'm comfortable sharing with Jim, but it never has not hurt. Like to where I like feel like I'm welling up, or feel like I'm telling it again for the first time. Like each time it reopens a wound, but it's not. It would be worse if I wasn't talking about it. If I wasn't sharing who Jim was and the work the foundation's doing. Like I feel like it oddly, like you were asking what Jim's purpose or place. Like I feel like this now is my purpose. Like this is part of what I am and who I am. So I feel like I need to do it.
And I feel very similarly. But everyone doesn't. I mean, others who, like some of his siblings and such, loss affects people differently. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's a way to keep Jim alive, to keep his goodness, his hope. Jim just believed in the world. He believed that good people could make a difference. He just did, in tiny ways, Natalie. So it was something very beautiful that Jim had in his kind of unassuming, fun-loving way. I mean, he was a character, a really wonderful, wonderful person. He was just fun to be with. But he also had this gift. He just had a belief in people and the good possibilities. So when I give a talk or something, as Tom says, it is hard. It's hard to relive some of what we went through. But the cool thing is being able to share Jim's hope for the future, and his hope that even in the midst of awful things that happened, that something good can come out of it. That if we can inspire one person to choose to make a difference by hearing his story, that's a big deal. Mm. And that was kind of who Jim was. And so in that sense, it's very healing for me. To be able to share his spirit with the world. So.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.